Where the hell is he now? I can hear you asking. Looking back up that hill. And if you think that's steep, look what's coming. I've got to go up there. But before I do that, I am actually going to see about catching a train. What, I hear you say? A train? Yes, there's a railway station. They've even got a card point. Present card for entry or exit. So in other words, you bought your ticket, or you've got your card and you want to oyster card or key card, whatever they call it, you can catch a train here. Buy a ticket, and here we are in the middle of nowhere. Welcome to Doleham station. There we go. Little platform. Was originally double track, as you can see looking back through the bridge here. Nowadays served by very few trains. Something like 3 up in the morning and 1 up in the afternoon, and 1 down towards Hastings in the morning and 1 down at some ridiculous hour of the night. Now, the railway came between Rye, Winchelsea and Hastings in the 1880s or thereabouts. No stations between Winchelsea and Hastings. Then the South Eastern and Chatham decided that they'd seen other railways experimenting with steam railway motors, and so they bought a small fleet of Kitson steam rail motors, which I suppose were the forerunner of today's multiple units. And 3 wooden platform halts were opened. There was one probably about 3/4 of a mile to a mile that way at Snailham Halt. And incidentally, when my mum went to Rye Grammar School, they were living right at the bottom of Icklesham, a place called Broad Street at the time. I ain't going to go down there because it's all a private estate and everything. And she had to walk half a mile across the fields on a rough track to get to what was originally Staleham Crossing Halt when it was opened in 1907. This station was called Guestling Halt in 1907, and the station down at Guestling was called Guestling, or Guestling stroke Three Oaks in the village of Three Oaks was called Three Oaks Bridge Halt. All the names changed in 1909. Snailham Crossing Halt became Snailham Halt, this became Doleham Halt, and Three Oaks Station became Three Oaks and Guestling Halt. Then in 1959 that was dropped to just Three Oaks. Doleham, I don't know when the halt was dropped here, probably about the same time, and Snailham Halt was closed completely in 1959. That's interesting. Facilities for disabled people here. When the train pulls up in the appropriate place, I suppose the conductor will come out. They will unclip this and the ramp. This is most unusual. You know, it only serves a few houses, but I'm told in the summer it's quite popular with walkers who are quite prepared to get up at some ridiculous hour of the morning and catch a train here to start a walk. But considering where we are, it's so modern, isn't it? Look at that. And here's some old... Remember I've spoken to you before about the Southern Region Concrete Factory? There's some of its products. Let's have a look. The trouble is, it doesn't actually tell you when the trains Oh, here, there's no timetable. That's the only thing that's missing. Anyway, let's walk up to here. As I say, there are just a few houses up the hill from here, but there's the line towards Hastings. It's funny what a chance piece of information can lead you to find out after you've been out filming. Now, as we look at this view here, once upon a time, as I said before, this was double tracked, but to the left of that, where those trees are now, there was actually a couple of sidings, and they were built in around about 1900, 7 good years before the halt itself was opened, and initially they were built to serve the brickworks here. Now, in a moment, when I walk up the hill a little ways, you see this new lot of buildings in the close. That would seem to be the location of the old Doleham brickworks, which I will tell you a bit about in a later video, and also the strong connection to my family. It gets a bit complicated. The current day brickworks is at the top of the hill around to the right. I have no idea, I've not been able to find out if they're actual descendants of the original Doleham brickworks, but I can only guess they are, because they're still called Westcombes hand-built bricks, and I dare say the skills were transferred. But anyway, it seems that the brickworks had probably closed down here by about 1925-26ish, because from 1928 onwards, and this is where it ties in with a video I hope most of you will have seen, when the coal for the Breed waterworks stopped being transported by river to Breed Bridge, obviously the coal had to come from somewhere. It came from these sidings. You saw the hill, didn't you, at the start of this section of video? Now, the coal was unloaded here. I've no idea the size or even the type of the lorries. They probably would have been AECs, Fodens or ERFs or something like that. I would have gone up that steep hill and down onto the main Hastings to Ashford Road, across the bridge, and all the way along to the Breed waterworks. Goodness knows what a noise they must have made grinding up the hill, but there you go. And that went on until about 1961, when these sidings were officially closed to goods traffic. Maybe the coal traffic had stopped before that, I don't know. But it would certainly seem to be around the time when the pumps at Breed were converted from coal-fired to electric. So it all seems to fit in. But yes, looking at this picture, who could imagine 2 busy sidings, brickworks, coal? Oh wow, isn't that all a wonderful part of our social history? And people think, oh, he's a railway buff, he's a railway nut. There's nothing interesting about old railways, isn't there? And if we come over here, there's the line towards Rye, and a nice little look at the station platform. Very interesting and quirky place in the wilds of East Sussex. There's a couple of modern buildings here, but this is Doleham. That is Doleham Hill, and apart from the few cottages as you walk up the hill, that's it. Probably one of the least used stations in East Sussex, and yet doesn't seem to figure as the least used station in Britain. That's an interesting oddity. Anyway, and that is the row of cottages leading up the hill. There we are. And that is Doleham.
This is my mother and her brothers John and David. David is the baby in her arms, and they're sitting in the doorway of one of those cottages up Doleham Hill. I've no idea which one, but I'm drawn to the conclusion that most of those cottages might well have been built for the workers in the brickworks, because so far as I've been able to find out, this was probably the cottage occupied by George Westcombe, who eventually rose to become the foreman at the Doleham brickworks. Mind you, he'd have been about 60 something by the time this photo was taken, but anyway, yes, Doleham brickworks, I've spoken about that. He would have been my mother's great uncle and the son of Courtney Waldron Westcombe, who was the manager of the brickworks for a long time, and about whom you'll hear more later.
At about 6:30 on a very quiet Sunday morning, apart from the birds. Lovely scent coming from some of these plants. There are a lot of buddleia around here. There's a rather nice lot of buddleia there. Lots of blossom on the blackberries. But then it is July and we're heading towards the last third of July, so I think it'll be long before it's picking time. Doesn't the year go by so quickly? Oh, look at it. Did I just come down there? My word. Time to go, folks.